Hello, I'm Panos Kotzathanasis, and this is ASEAN Movie Pulse Interviews. Today I'm here with Fawaz Al-Matrouk, whose film Anwar was recently selected to screen at Sedona International Film Festival. Okay, how are you, Fawaz?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, excellent. So I have to start with some questions that are a bit personal, but this is what came to me after watching the film. So first of all,
Okay.
what do you think it happens when we die?
I think the film is very conscious about not having an answer to that.
Mm,
So it's important for me in the film that it's about love transcending our differences. And so it was important to me that the film doesn't give an answer, but shows two opposing views and how people navigate that.
hmm. Okay, second question in the same line, again from the film. Do you think that parents should have life and death choice about their kids?
Oh, that is a good question, and in the film. It's kind of inspired by different consent choices that parents have over their children now, and the idea of the child then being able to grow up to be making their own choices about themselves after, a certain time. I do think that that age seems kind of arbitrary in different cultures. Like some people make it younger, some people make it older. In Canada, you can drink at 19 years old. In the US, is 21 years old, you know? Um, so for me personally, um, I think it does make sense that up to a certain age, the child is in your care and hasn't yet formed their own capacity to choose. But I don't know what that line actually should be, you know?
Hmm.
Um, that's a very philosophical question that is, I think, beyond my expertise.
Okay, okay. Well, and another of the topics of the film, I think it's about eternal life, living forever. What's your opinion on that topic?
You mean whether or not I would want to live
Yeah,
forever?
yeah.
I think it would depend on what the technology is. I'd have to understand it, and I think we would have to understand what consciousness is a lot more than we do right now. Um, because my fear would be kind of what we experience in the film with there's a moment where Anwar says to his mother, you're not my mother, you're a robot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and uh I think that would be my fear is actual, as if you're transferring into a synthetic body to live forever, is that actually who you are still on the other side, or are you just kind of a mechanistic copy of who you were? So I'd want to understand that a lot more. But assuming that it is you, I would absolutely want to live forever. I think there I'd love to travel the universe. I'd love to see what humanity looks like in 300 years, like that's if you look back 300 years, things were so different. And I'm so curious to see what we do and where we end up and, what we discover about existence. I think that would excite me.
Hmm. Hmm. And
Can I can I reverse that question back to you? How
uh,
would what? Yeah.
I feel the same to tell you the truth. Yeah, yeah. Better to have the option to die at some point or something like that than, knowing that I will die at 80. Yeah, better to live a couple of 100 years. I think it would be better for sure. But forever, I don't, it's a difficult question, isn't it? Like, okay, maybe 300 is okay, but 3,000? I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe at some point you're like, yeah, I've done everything. I'm gonna move on. But honestly, just the books in my own personal library, I think it would take me 100 years or more to
Mm,
read. So,
yeah.
imagine all the books that are still out there. There's just so much in this world that's really wonderful. So,
Mhm, mhm. And how did you decide to include all these existential questions, this philosophical in the movie? Was that the starting point or did they came up afterwards?
Yeah, no, that was the starting point. So the first thing that came for me in the movie was this image of like a post-human mother and child, Madonna and child kind of image with a robot mother and a human child. And as I started investigating that story more, it became kind of this really philosophical exploration about what it would mean if we are able to live forever. What does that mean to all of our beliefs about the world? Because I think so much of our philosophies, our faiths are about our relationship to death and our hope for what might come afterwards, you know? So if you are able to live forever, what does that mean to everything that we've inherited, you know? So that was kind of the heart of the story for me, and then it developed from there.
Mhm, mhm. And but do you think it is a question that the answer changes from when you are young to when you are old? Because I felt that the film also shows something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Anwar grows up from 8 to 18 to 80, and I think at 8 the ideas he's just learning about his choice. At 18 he's kind of, you know, like an angry teenager, really separating himself from his mother's belief, really um, trying to kind of understand things for himself. And because he's the last biological human, as far as he knows, I mean, he hopes that's not the case, and he's trying to find others, but um, he holds on to that as an identity, you know? And then at 80, I think, you know, um, I think sometimes as we grow older, like our beliefs become a lot less firm and a lot more about possibilities, you know? And I think he has kind of like a you know, there's a saying about how there's no atheist in the foxhole, that when you're facing death, then you have to kind of acknowledge that there's something you hope for beyond. And he has a moment that's like the reverse of that. You
Hmm.
know, he's facing death, and because he knows it's possible to live forever, he has this moment of doubt where he actually thinks, well, maybe I do want this. Maybe I do want to live forever, you know? So yeah, I think definitely in the story there's a change in that perspective. In real life, I mean, I think when we're young, we actually kind of assume that we're going to live forever in a way. Like the idea of death is not real, you know? And then as we grow older, it becomes a lot more real. And I think one of the most beautiful reflections I heard about the film that came at the Sedona Film Festival, it was a much older audience for that screening. You know, a lot of the people were in their 60s, 70s, and one person said, you know, pointed that out, and he said for himself, as he approaches kind of having to accept that his life will end at some point soon, probably, um, that he has a lot of fear, and the film gave him curiosity. You know,
Hmm.
the film made him kind of curious about what might come next, which was really touching for me, you know. Yeah.
Hmm. And since you mentioned the festival, how was the reaction of the audience to the film, the reception in general?
It was wonderful. It was a really beautiful experience. And this is just kind of the start of our festival journey. So I'm hoping it goes to other places. I hope it goes to Greece. I hope, you know, I hope we continue to get to share it with audiences. There's a few other festivals lined up right now. And yeah, we're kind of continuing it. But that really, as a filmmaker, that is um uh, there's a couple of things that are really, really meaningful in the filmmaking journey for me. One is just being on set and being with all these other artists and getting to create something together. And the other is being in a screening and getting to share it with people and to feel it through them, feel the story, feel their heart, feel their reactions. And it was just a really beautiful experience.
Hmm. Hmm. And tell me a bit about the casting. How did it work? And was it difficult that you had to cast three different persons for the same role, essentially? How did that work?
Yeah, that was a really scary part of it when I was writing it. You know, originally I tend to do this a lot where I write things thinking, oh, I want to make something really small that's very achievable. And then as I write it, I'm like, oh no, this has gotten really big and it's probably not achievable. Which is why I write short fiction. I've had some short stories published, and it's because, you know, there's no budget to consider. I can write Alexandria 1789 and it cost me just as much as writing San Francisco 2025. It's the same price. With a film, that's not the case. And so one of the big challenges was how do we cast these three Anwars? Because each of the roles carries a huge emotional weight. So you have to have actors that are really strong. And where we ended up starting with was the oldest Anwar. So Jay Abdo is just an incredible talent. He's a legendary actor from Syria. And I saw a documentary about him that a friend of mine made about his experience coming to Hollywood as a refugee. And so I reached out to my friend and I said, "Hey, could you write me an intro to Jay? Is there any way that you can send him the script?" And Jay came on. And so that was a really wonderful moment in the life of making the film. And then from there, it was about working with a casting director, Cherie Mezek, who's phenomenal, and trying to find actors that could believably be the younger versions of Jay, who are also very strong actors. And she found us Leo Etemadi for 8 years old, and she found us Safe Haj for 18, and it really felt miraculous. And then another couple of things that felt miraculous with the casting for Mona, the mother, uh, my producers and I were talking about like what would be dream casting if we could just get absolutely anyone out there, what would it be? And I really wanted to work with Carrie Bichet for this because she's somebody whose work I really love, who's really engaged with questions of science and technology and ethics and our relationship to them. And so I decided, why not try? And so I wrote a letter and we sent it through, you know, our casting director and her agents. And I thought almost no chance, you know, this will happen. But she loved the story and came on board. And it was, if that was you know, a personal career highlight for me is getting to work with her on this.
Mhm. How did you guide her for the role? I'm a bit curious because you have her acting. Sometimes she acts like a robot, let's say. There is that aspect in her role. So how was that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about that. And the thing with Carrie is that she is so good at embodying and doing what she needs to do that really like the guidance for me is just about talking deeply about the story and what we hope to achieve, and then just trusting her, you know, because she gets there. So we talked a lot about, is Mona meant to feel like a robot or to feel like human? And it's important to me that the the Ever people consider themselves the next evolution of humanity, you know, that Mona really sees herself as a human being, just in a synthetic form that can live forever. But she thinks her soul is preserved. So that's why it was important to just kind of have very light touches of this kind of syntheticness or roboticism, that it's not like it's not too much, you know? And I think Carrie ended up really embodying that in a beautiful way.
So in general, did you allow improvisation or were you strict with your actors?
No, I'm very much, my approach to directing in general is that my role is to inspire the artists around me to do their best work towards a common vision. So I think it's important to have, you know, the script is there as a guideline and as like a container for the work. But from there, you know, I encourage any kind of additions or changes or things. And we did rehearsals, and even in the rehearsals, you know, there's a few lines where Carrie's like, I don't think I would say this here. You know, I think And there's moments where I saw something and I'm like, I don't think those words need to be said, or I think maybe we adjust it this way. I'm trying to remember. There's a line where she says they made my body new, where she's talking about the transformation process. My line was like they put me into this body or something like that, but she made it a lot more personal, kind of taking more ownership of her body and saying like they made my body new. And there were a lot of little tweaks like that. Uh, and then there was one scene where I'd written certain blocking, and as we were blocking it on set, I kind of changed that. And Carrie felt like the original vision was really important, and she brought that up. She's like, I think, you wrote that it's a pietà at the end when Anwar is like dying in her arms as an old man. And she's like, this blocking is not a pietà. It doesn't look like that. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. So we changed that. So it was kind of a really collaborative process of a shared exploration of the truths of the story. It wasn't like, this is what I want and what I need. It was like a shared exploration of something that felt true to both of us.
And then tell me a bit about the location, which is really impressive. Where did you shoot?
We filmed in Santa Cruz in California. I spent months location scouting to find places that looked, we were on a very, very low budget. And so much of science fiction is about space and it's about location. And it's also about atmosphere, which we got lucky. It was rainy and it was foggy, and that was just luck. Um, but yeah, I spent a long time scouting and trying to find locations that were close enough together that we could just all have one home base. And we filmed for 4 days. So it was very, very challenging, but I'm happy with what we got in the end. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
What about you have some special effects there? How did you work on that? Okay, you say that this is a low budget film, but I have to say it doesn't look low budget at all, to tell you the truth in the end. So tell me a bit about that.
Thank you. I mean, a big part of that is uh the amount of free labor that goes into it. Like I put in a lot of my time and energy. The producers put in a lot of their time and energy. Um, and you know, I had a mentor who used to say that things can be either fast, cheap, or good, and you can only have two of those. You cannot have all three. Um, and so for us, it was hopefully good, aiming for good, and just really slow. We filmed in uh 2022, and the film is just coming out now, and end of 24 was our first screening in Nantes. So yeah, it was just like a lot of patience and visualizing the special effects with my friend David Tenorio, who's a concept artist. Um, and he gave a lot of his time and energy into it. And being able to go to the VFX supervisors with a kind of a specific vision that they can then work off of and add their own little tweaks. So that was, yeah. I
Hmm.
can I can talk more specifically if you want about any of those scenes, but I'm glad it seems like a bigger budget thing, because yeah, it was a lot of effort to get
Hmm.
it there.
And okay, a hypothetical question. If this was a feature, what else would you do with the film?
I actually have written the feature, so I can tell you, not hypothetically.
Okay, good, good.
So the feature version starts when Anwar is a baby, and it starts. There's a in the short film they reference in the background there was like a war.
Hmm.
Um, and so it starts during that war when his father is still alive, when uh his mother has to make her own choice about whether she wants to live forever or not. Um, and then there's more time spent with the similar scenes to what we have in the short film at 8, 18, and 80. And there's more time spent in the gap between 18 and 80 to kind of examine what his life was like living as a hermit. And uh, and then the role of Bramwell, who's the antagonist, is really expanded in the feature as well. And he has an ending that's kind of modeled a little bit on one of my favorite antagonists, which is Javert in Les Miserables.
Hmm.
So he has an ending where he kind of realizes that his worldview uh is wrong. You know, he really wants to force Anwar against his will. And that realization ends up kind of destroying him. So anyway, there's a lot more to explore. There's a lot more I can explore in this world, you know. I have another feature that I wrote that's about the first person ever to do the transference into a synthetic body and the choices she has to make and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot more to explore.
Hmm. So are you planning to continue this universe, let's say, in the future?
I'd love to. I have a lot of other stories as well, and it'll depend on what, I can get going in terms of the producing end of things. But yes, I think there's a deep well of possibilities with the world of Anwar, so I'd love to keep working on it.
Hmm. Hmm. And tell me a bit a more general question. How is it being a filmmaker nowadays? Does it make sense financially? How is it? How do you make a living? I don't know. I'm always curious about
No,
that, you know.
yeah, it makes zero sense financially. I mean, this film made zero sense financially. It uh was not good for me. Um, but there's still work to be done. I do like commercials and industrials and things like that. So there's still work to be done as a producer and director. Um, and I don't know what it's like to be doing kind of more more of the personal work in filmmaking professionally, because this film is just kind of a labor of love. It's not it's not something that I was paid for, obviously. Um, but I hope it still makes sense. It's a career I would love to have in my life. And I know a lot of people who do have that kind of career, but it is a tough time right now, especially with a lot of uncertainty about what the emerging technologies around AI is going to do for the film industry. So we'll wait and see, but you know, the for me, looking at it from a view of history, there's always disruptions when there's emerging technology. Um, and then people always figure out a way to tell really important stories. And so that's my guiding light. I there's stories that I want to tell, and we'll see how it becomes possible or not to tell them.
Mhm. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Okay, that.